The transfer of troops, the supply of weapons and the evacuation of embassies. How the Ukrainian crisis develops. Tensions are unabated on the border between Russia and Ukraine. Tens of thousands of servicemen and significant amounts of military equipment are concentrated on it. The United States, Australia, and Great Britain have already thought about the removal of their diplomats from Kyiv, and negotiations between Moscow and Washington, including Ukraine, have not yet brought concrete results. The BBC Russian service tells what is known about the movement of troops near the Russian-Ukrainian border, what they are accompanied by and how the negotiations are going. What's going on right now? On Monday it became known that the UK is beginning to export some diplomats and their families from Ukraine in response to the growing threat from Russia. The day before, the media reported that the US Embassy in Kyiv applied to the State Department for permission to remove some of the technical personnel from Ukraine. The State Department, in turn, recommended that Americans currently in Ukraine consider the possibility of leaving immediately. U.S. citizens in Ukraine should be aware that Russian military action anywhere in Ukraine will seriously impact the ability of the U.S. Embassy to provide consular services, including assistance to U.S. citizens when leaving Ukraine, the statement said. At the same time, the head of EU diplomacy, Josep Borrell, said on Monday that European diplomats were not going to leave Ukraine yet. He urged not to dramatize the situation while negotiations are underway, and promised to find out from the United States what dictated their step. The Russian side, meanwhile, continues to accuse the Ukrainian authorities of preparing an attack on the self-proclaimed DPR and LPR. The threat of provocations from Ukraine in the Donbass is now higher than before, Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov said on Monday. Denis Pushilin, the head of the self-proclaimed DPR, also speaks about the allegedly preparing Kyiv offensive in the Donbass, while the Russian ambassador to the UK, Andrei Kelin, earlier in an interview with Sky News claimed that NATO was pushing Ukraine to pursue a more aggressive policy towards Russia. How the tension grew. On January 21, Reuters released a new video showing the accumulation of Russian troops near the Ukrainian border. The transfer of trains with military equipment in the western direction takes place against the backdrop of the announcement of new Russian Belarusian exercises Allied Resolve 2022. They were announced on January 17 by Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko.